All right, Chapter 9, Part 221, Rear End Market Devices, Passenger, Commuter, and Freight Trains, the Operational Practice, Inspectorship Reference, the Motor Power and Equipment Compliance Manual for the General Guidance regarding the Part 221. Motor Power and Equipment of the Inspector have primarily responsible for the enforcement of the Part 221. However, this does not provide the operating practice inspector to report deficiency violations to compliance with Part 221 observed while conducting the work of the operational discipline. The inspection and observation monitoring for the rear end market devices shall be performed during the hours the rear end market devices are required to be displayed per the requirements of Part 221. Railroad operating rules may specify additional periods of the time where rear-ended marks are required. An exception to the railroad operating rules where there has been no violation of requirements of Part 221 will be recorded as a railroad operating rule or ROR. Non-RFRA defective. Operation practice should be aware that there are major differences between rear end market devices and two-way end of the train devices. The end of the train devices are fulfill the rear end marking device requirements, but the rear end marking does not usually function as the end of the train. The following experts of the Chapter 6 of the Power Motive and Equipment and Compliance Manual explains the difference. Although the most of the end of the train incorporate the rear end marking training device with the built-in device regulatory requirement, the two devices can be misinterpreted. Each of the devices accomplishes separate and functions. The rear end marking increases visibility of the train during the low ambient lighting conditions. At the end of the train transmit information to the head of the train on the Viva the railroad telemetry. Another discretion is in all the trains required to the operating the rear end of the train device and during the specified low ambient light conditions. Not all train is required to be equipped with the end of the train device. Guidance. Operational practice. Inspectors should not normally be involved with the inspection of room locations where rear-ended marking devices are stored or recharged or maintained. A rear-end marker left on the grade of the switching leading near a switch in the yard may be represent a violation of the railroad operation safety rules. A rear-end marking left on the switching lead is a slip, trip, or fall hazard and poor work site housekeeping practice that could be signal more serious compliance issue than are present. Heavy grade territory, two-way of any of the train device requirements found in Title 49 CFR Part 232 will, in the operating practice, inspector notices the train on the grade without the two-way end of the train device. He or she should consider consulting the local motive power and equipment inspector to receive the regulation. The two-way end of the train device may be equipped with a copy of the track chart that will identify the length of the grade of the piece of the track under review. Statute 221.5. The yard of the movement exclusions from the inspector question whether the lighted market requirements are applicable to the situation where the train of the market, the track, enters the yard limit, although the definition of the train in Statute 221.5 excludes yard limit. It was the intent of the regulation to exclude within the definitions of all movements considering the train's movement to exclude the operation of the place in the yard, entirely in the yard limits. Therefore, the limited markers are required during the period of the restricted visibility on the train operating with the main track event of the entire yard limits. The term yard movement means that the movement is operated with exclusively on the track within the designated limits of the yard, whose movement on the main track, where the limits are governed with the yard limit. The minimum requirements of the yard limit rule is defined in Statute 218.35. If during the course of operation a yard limit or yard movement is required to operate with the main track outside the designated limits of the yard movement, the purpose of the Part 220 becomes the train that is involved with the railroad operation conducted with the main track that will require rear end marking devices. 221.31. 221.13 marking device display. Rear end marker device. Rear end markers are required to display on each of the train occupies operates with the main track between 1 hour at the sunrise, 1 hour after the sunset, during all hours when the weather conditions are restrictedly visible and the end of the silhouette of the standard boxcar cannot be seen for a half a mile tangent by the person by the 20/20 corrective vision. Marker must be displayed on the train ending of the rear of the car, most continuously illuminate or flash in accordance with the requirements. Part 221 or 221.14 locomotive operated singly at the rear of the train with low beam headlight illuminated complies with the rear end marker requirements. 221.15 market device inspection. Most of them, not all rear-end market devices equipped with the photoelectric cell will illuminate during the reducing the ambient light conditions. The device should operate intended with the operation required with the regulation to be expended to each of the crew change point. The examination can be accomplished by each of the visually by use of radio telemetry, which when equipped. Some of the railroads will issue the roll in by inspect for the outbound train inspection specific location terminals. If the visual inspection is performed by the personnel other than the train crew assigned with the train enrolled by station by any other inspection, the section requires the result of the examination must be communicated to the locomotive engineer. 221.16 inspector procedure. The inspector of the rear end marker is conducted within accordance with Statute 221.16b of the non-trained crew. The blue signal protection regulation found with the 218 do not apply with the Section 221.16b. In order to establish alternative means of protection under the Section 1 of the train to be inspected shall and stand on the main track. The inspection shall be not limited to the exertion of the mark at the proper operation condition. Before performing the inspection procedure, the inspector should personally contact the locomotive engineer, holster, or be advised that the person that they are occupying the cab of the controlling locomotive at the train and will remain the secure ends movement until the inspection has been completed. Not applicable to the air gauge readout. The inspection applies to the inspection of the rear end of the mark of the main track and not air gauge readout of the end of the train device. However, the permissible manual activity of the air gauge readout switch with the stick or may be seen means provided can be done with the following train track. The question and condition with the statute 221.116 cannot be met with the provision of 228.55 to 218.27 pertaining to the blue signal protection applying depending on whether the test is performed on the main track or other main track. Motive power inspectors should be consulted regarding any of the issues regarding the end of the train device's issues. 221.17. The movement of the defective equipment. The regulation allows the railroad to continue the movement of the train experiences the rear end of the market device's failure while en route. The inoperative device must be repaired, replaced, and that is forwarded to the location where the replacement repairs can be made. Again, with the motive power and equipment inspector should consult with the regulator regarding an issue regarding the rear end markers failing en route. Chapter 10. Using locomotive horns in public railways. Grade crossing.